Humans, for the most part, don't have a clue. They don't want one or need one either. They're happy. They think they have a good bead on things.
Well, why the big secret? People are smart. They can handle it.
A person is smart. People are dumb, panicky, dangerous animals, and you know it. 1,500 years ago, everybody knew the Earth was the center of the universe. 500 years ago, everybody knew the Earth was flat. And 15 minutes ago, you knew that people were alone on this planet. Imagine what you'll know tomorrow.
As Hollywood is telling us, everyone knew the Earth was the center of the universe, and 500 years ago, everyone knew the Earth was flat. It's more like 5,000 years there was a belief in the creation and workings of our universe that traversed and paralleled similar understandings over many lands and cultures over many centuries as to an understanding and belief of a stationary round or square flat Earth with planets and stars revolving around a centered Earth. We were truly thought to be the center of all things, and we were beholding the kingdom of God inside each and every one of us. Why is this vast and important history of a much different geography and metaphysical existence never taught or even discussed in schools or academia? It is such a huge fabric of our collective historical garment. For 500 years, we've been indoctrinated to believe mostly hidden until now Roman Catholic-based story of a universe that is heliocentric and a universe so vast and distant as to make human reference unfathomable. Just setting out to question what science and history tells us is to invite ridicule, scorn, and the deep questioning of one's own sanity. However, once one embarks to truly read and comprehend the literature available that questions the heliocentric theory of a 14-billion-year-old atheistic Big Bang Darwin round ball, whose Earth members are just one of billions and billions of central suns and solar systems traveling at incomprehensible speeds, to be even curiously examined is to get many more questions than answers. And with those that have open minds and eyes to see and ears to hear, this information can become unsettling. To save some of you from wasting your time, those that do not believe we are spiritual beings having a physical experience, the following presentation will most likely not be for you. But for all others, I invite you to take a very brief review of flat Earth history, research, and conspiracy. For some 5,000 years, until the likes of Copernicus, Galileo, and Newton came along in the 16th and 17th centuries, declaring Earth to be a globe in a heliocentric universe, nearly all civilizations believed the Earth to be flat and unmoving. The Babylonians, Chaldeans, Sumerians, Tibetans, Vedics, Hebrews, Egyptians, Scandinavians, Incans, Mayans, and Native Americans all believed in a God-divined, geocentric, Earth-stationary, plane, flat universe. Babylonian cosmology was based around a three-part universe ruled by Enlil, a heaven above, an underworld below, and a geocentric flat and unmoving Earth in between. Babylonians believed in a six-level universe with 3 heavens and 3 earths, 2 heavens above the sky, the heaven of the stars, the earth, the underground of the Apsu, and the underworld of the dead. The earth was created by the god Marduk as a raft floating on the Apsu. The gods were divided into 2 pantheons, one occupying the heavens and the others occupying the underworld. Ancient Greek Chaldeans believed in 7 heavens and their crystalline spheres, encircling the earth as their center. Sumerian cosmology believed in a plurality of heavens and earths, of 7 heavens, 7 earths, created by 7 generations of gods, the metal sky vault being made of tin. Ancient Vedic and Buddhist cosmology held that the earth was a disk consisting of 4 continents grouped around a central mountain, Mount Meru, like the petals of a flower. An outer ocean surrounds these continents. This view of traditional Buddhist and Jain cosmology depicts the cosmos as a vast oceanic disk, the magnitude of a small planetary system bounded by mountains in which the continents are set as small islands. Tibetans also believed in a metallic sky surrounded by an iron heaven. In Celtic mythology, the father god's skull is the dome of heaven, which echoes the Aryan idea that the sky evolved from the head of the cosmic man Purusha, and therein dwelled the earliest Vedic gods. The fear of Chicken Little comes from this ancient cosmology when Celtic leaders feared that the sky would fall on their heads. Ancient Arabics, being great mathematicians, applied their science to cosmology of 7 heavens and a vast universe sustained by Allah. The ancient Norse and Germanic peoples believed in a flat earth cosmography of the earth surrounded by an ocean and a cosmic egg, with a central world tree, Yggdrasil, or a pillar, Irminsul, in the center, similar to the Tibetan beliefs. The Norse believed that in a world-encircling ocean sat a snake called Jormungandr. In the Norse creation, it is stated that during the creation of the earth, an impassable sea was placed around the earth like a ring. In the Finnish Kalevala, the sky is made of the finest steel. In ancient China, the prevailing cosmic belief was the earth was flat and square, while the heavens were round. Chinese astronomers describe the heavens as spherical. Quote, "The heavens are like a hen's egg and as round as a crossbow bullet. The earth is like the yolk of the egg and lies in the center." Yin-yang symbolism representing the circle in the sun and the moon above. Now, the mighty dynastic Egyptians were one of the first cultural groups to develop a cosmology creation myth based on observations of the night sky that were formulated into various myths which became the core of Egyptian religion. Since its principal deities were heavenly bodies, a great deal of effort was made by the priesthood to calculate and predict the time and place in their gods' appearances. Goddess Nut is often portrayed as a naked female stretched across the sky. The sun god Ra is shown entering her mouth, passing through her star-speckled body, and emerging from her birth canal 9 months later. Thus, Ra becomes a self-creating god, and the universe can therefore be understood as self-creating and eternal. To discount or dismiss the ancients who believed in a flat earth and domed sky is to make a serious error in assumption, for their creations still stand today some 5,000 to 10,000 years later. Even today, with our great technology, science, and engineering, we are at a complete loss as to how they accomplished such incredible feats. Consider the following. The Great Pyramid is estimated to have around 2.3 million stone blocks that weigh from 2 to 3 tons each, and there are even some blocks that weigh over 50 tons. We cannot duplicate nor reason as to how this was done. The outer mantle was composed of 144,000 casing stones, all of them highly polished and flat to an accuracy of 1/100th of an inch, about 100 inches thick and weighing approximately 15 tons each. How these blocks were transported over sometimes hundreds of miles and assembled into the pyramids is still a mystery today. The cornerstone foundations of the pyramid have a ball and socket construction capable of dealing with heat expansion and earthquakes. It has been analyzed and its chemical composition is known, but it can't be reproduced. It is stronger than stone and still holding up today. The Great Pyramid is the most accurately aligned structure in the existence and faces true north with only a 3/60th of a degree of error. The Great Pyramid is located at the center of the landmass of the earth and is built on landfill and is off level by the smallest of margins still today. In each of the ancient Mayan, Incan, and Native American cosmologies, the universe was encompassed by the sky, earth, and underworld as well. Each viewed celestial bodies as living beings that influenced man and could be affected by them. Each held the belief that people came from the earth and dwelled in the center of the universe. The universe of the Maya was centered on a tiered pyramid and rested upon a crocodilian cosmic sea. 4 sacred beings supported the dome of heaven, illustrated as a 2-headed dragon, which had a body as a sky band of celestial symbols. It is arched over the moon goddess, who is holding the rabbit discerned in the moon's face, and a skeletal Venus and a sun god. The king of the Incan people believed he was the son of the sun, and the cosmos was centered on the sun temple at Cusco, Peru. Milky Way blended into the underworld and brought dark, fertile mud to the sky upon its return, which formed the patches that resemble animals. The sun is portrayed as a male god, and the moon as a female. The Navajo cosmos was portrayed as a sand painting. The first hogan, or level, was built in the place the ancestors emerged from and traveled through 3 previous worlds before arising from a hollow reed into this glittering place. The 4 quarters of the world is characterized with color, holy mountain, time of day, and a sacred person. The rainbow god is a guardian, and the sky sparkles with constellations of the Milky Way, symbolized by a band of crosses. Young warriors carry the blue sun and the white moon. Beyond the sky is a land in which the big yellow wind and the big red thunder rule. The world turtle, which is also referred to as the cosmic turtle or the divine turtle, is of a giant turtle or tortoise supporting or containing the world. The theme, which is similar to that of the world elephant and world serpent, we see occurring throughout Chinese, Vedic, and ancient American mythology. In the Cheyenne tradition, the great creator spirit Maheo needs some mud he takes from the coot's beak until it expands so much that only the old grandmother turtle can support it on her back. In the Mohawk tradition, the trembling or shaking of the earth is thought of as a sign that the world turtle is stretching beneath the great weight that she carries. Indians of North America use combs made of tortoiseshell to signify the margin between life and death. According to their beliefs, the cosmic tree emerges from the spine of the tortoise. The 13 shapes of the turtle's back also represented the 13 phases of the moon. In Chinese mythology, the creator goddess Nua cut the legs off the giant sea turtle Ao and used them to prop up the sky after Gong Gong damaged the Bazao mountain that had previously supported the heavens. Mount Kailash in Tibet is the physical embodiment of Mount Meru. For the Buddhist and Hindu people, it was created by the god Indra when a huge herd of flying elephants had displeased him. So he punished them by cutting off their wings, and he turned them into the Himalayan mountains. Most modern scholars claim that the Bible teaches an earth flat and rectangular in shape, which is placed on 7 pillars, which in turn are based on a foundation. Samuel Rowbotham, founder of the modern flat earth movement, cited 76 scriptures in the last chapter of his monumental second edition of Earth Not a Globe. The Bible is a composite work over time, so there's no priori reason why the cosmology assumed by its various writers should be relatively consistent, but it is. The Bible is, from Genesis to Revelation, a flat earth book. The Genesis creation story provides the first key to the Hebrew cosmology. The order of creation makes no sense from a conventional perspective, but is perfectly logical from a flat earth viewpoint. The earth was created on the first day, and it was without form and void. On the second day, a vault, the quote firmament of the King James Version, was created to divide the waters, some being above and some being below the vault. Only on the fourth day were the sun, moon, and stars created, and they were placed in, not above the vault. The vault of heaven is a crucial concept. The word firmament appears in the King James Version of the Old Testament 17 times, and in each case it is translated from the Hebrew word rakia, which meant the visible vault of the sky. Daniel 4:10-11, the king, quote, saw a tree of great height at the center of the earth, reaching with its top to the sky and visible to the earth's farthest bounds. This same depiction of a central flat stationary earth with a central tree is found in many other cosmological beliefs throughout history. It was during the mid-1700s and 1800s that the Royal Society of London Astronomers held unilateral sway over what was acceptable and thereby taught as the scientific theory and proof in the Western world. Isaac Newton, founder of the invisible, still unproven gravity theory, it should be noted, was at one time president of the Royal Society at London, as well as head of the Mint of England for the Crown. However, there were skeptics at the time who chose to independently determine for themselves, using reason, common sense, logic, and their own observations, to determine Earth's geography and place in the cosmos. Flat plane theorists believe Earth to be a flat round plane with a central pole to the north, an enclosed circle to the south, holding the mighty oceans in by a great ice wall all around. This is one possible reason why a compass will only point to the magnetic north and not to a magnetic south. Also, Newton's gravity theory is not necessary on a flat Earth, since objects fall solely based on weight, density, and aerodynamics. The sun and moon are thought to be some 3,000 miles above us, moving in concentric circles, the sun thought to be 32 to 33 miles in diameter. Flat Earth theorists believe the moon and sun to be moving in concentric circles, moving inward and outward, between the latitudes of the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn to create our seasons here on Earth. It is believed that the moon and sun are merely hundreds of miles above the flat Earth, not hundreds of thousands or tens of millions of miles away, as taught by globalist theory. The firmament, or dome above, thought to be impenetrable and supporting the circling of the stars above. The stars are believed to be principally light energy beings, as well as planets, not of dense material, but light energy. The moon is thought to be translucent and luminous in its own silvery light. If one simply studies the light from the moon, they will find it to be cool and silver, not a heated, warm, golden reflection from the sun. In Genesis 1:16, on the fourth day, the Bible reads, God then made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. A flat round plane still easily allows for circumnavigation of the Earth. Think of a record player and a boat being the needle traveling in circumference. To help change perception of Earth being a globe and not a flat plane, the journey of Christopher Columbus's fear of sailing off a flat Earth was created, only to find that it was a globe. This was sold and taught in schools for generations to this day, when in fact Columbus never even set foot on the American continent and only got as far as Haiti on his first journey. Here is a very interesting take by Irish scholar Michael Tazarian as to the makeup and possible reason for the firmament above.
And if you're into people like Nazim Haramein, the great physicist scientist, he's even talked about the fact that the sun is a black hole by which you do the time travel. Right? So they may have needed to get out when they got out, etc., etc., etc. There may be all sorts of reasons. But they knew that just in case these beings do exist on Earth, that they're there, they erected what is known as an etheric barrier around the Earth, around our Earth. And the magnetic key of that is the moon. And it's still there, by the way. And that is why no man has ever gone beyond the moon. You can go to the moon, but you can't go beyond it. And you never will. They can send a machine out there, but isn't it interested you that they still haven't gone out there as a human form? This is something that's been held from us. You can't. There's a barrier of energy up there around our Earth that's of an esoteric nature. It involves technology, yes, but of a technology of an extremely advanced nature that even these aliens probably couldn't crack or get out. So this Earth was in quarantine. If you read C.S. Lewis, he goes into all of this about Earth being quarantined. And the name that he has for our planet is called Fulcandra, the silent planet. It has to be quarantined off from the rest of the 9 planets because planets are not really material bodies, they're intelligences of a kind. And our planet is under quarantine, so this Armageddon, this inner war can take place in sequestrament. Okay, just like you quarantine a sick patient.
Investigations into flat Earth theory versus globalist theory. One finds that the globalists over the years have used the word apparent a lot to tell you that what you're seeing is not what is really occurring in the cosmos. Since this is a 500-year-old story, many of the explanations by the astronomers and scientists as to distance, motion, size, and makeup of the cosmos flies directly in our faces as to the common sense and what we observe for ourselves here on Earth with our own eyes. Such as the moon and the sun being apparently the same size in the sky using our own observations, yet science tells us this is not really what is the relationship in size and distance to each other. They tell us that the sun is 400 times bigger than the moon, the Earth rotates 400 times faster than the moon, the Earth is nearly 4 times bigger than the moon, an incredible synchronicity to create perfect lunar eclipses. Yet through basic observation, we see the sun and the moon are basically the same size in the sky, which makes an eclipse possible. Interestingly, the ancients believed the lunar eclipse to be a representation of our eye or window to the soul, the moon representing the principle and quality of consciousness of the soul and the subconscious mind. They believed contained within the soul and the subconscious mind is the storehouse of our memories, not just of this lifetime, but of all our past lives. Globalist claims we are spinning on Earth's axis at an incredible 1,000 miles per hour or 19 miles per minute at the equator, while rocketing around the sun each year at an even more incredible 1,000 miles per second. Yet a fixed telescope on Earth hardly has to make any adjustments stargazing at the moon or the stars except for minimal drift. How can this be when an Earth is moving through space so rapidly while spinning so fast? Measurements of Earth's curvatures using basic spherical geometry are quite easy to determine the angles of a round ball Earth as to how much feet or miles of change would be occurring. To determine how much the Earth falls away on the curve, you take miles squared times 8 inches. This is an inverse relationship, so the farther one travels, the greater the distance of feet or miles the Earth should be falling away. David Wardlow Scott in his book Terra Firma writes, quote, "Whoever heard of a river in any part of its course flowing uphill? Yet this is what would be required to do were the Earth a globe. Rivers like the mighty Mississippi, which flow from the north southwards towards the equator, would need, according to modern astronomic theory, to run upwards, as the Earth at the equator is said to bulge out considerably more, or in other words, is higher than at any other part. Thus the Mississippi, in its immense course over 3,000 miles, would have to ascend 11 miles before it reached the Gulf of Mexico. Water seeks its own level, and never do we see oceans go uphill or downhill, which would have to be the case if we were living on a sphere as the heliocentrists claim we are. Another very easily verifiable point to that we are living on a flat Earth and not a globe is the Sala de Uyuni salt flats of Bolivia, the flattest place on Earth. It is 100 miles long by 84 miles wide and should have a drop of some 12 miles over its entire length, yet measurements show its total elevation change to be less than 3 feet over its total length, thus disproving a round ball Earth but a flat Earth. Renowned Greek philosopher Aristotle believed in a geocentric Earth, but questioned whether the Earth was truly flat or a sphere. He had 3 basic questions from his observations. The first question, the disappearance of a ship as it sails over the horizon, the hull vanishing first and the mast and the rigging last, and the reappearance of an approaching ship in reverse order. What Aristotle failed to comprehend is what is called the law of perspective. When viewing to a distance, objects will converge towards the center line, and the viewpoint in the bottom will disappear over the horizon before the top. This is why ships' hulls disappear on the horizon before the masts. Aristotle's second observation was the curving shape of the Earth's shadow on the moon during an eclipse. An eclipse is when the Earth moves in line with the moon and the sun. All 3 must align to create the eclipse. Yet looking at photos of the eclipses from the perspective of the observer, we see both the sun and the moon above at the same time. Like billiard balls, the sun and the moon and the Earth would have to be in alignment according to globalists. It is still a mystery of the flat Earth theory as to what causes eclipses to occur. Thirdly, Aristotle was unable to rectify the changing aspect of the heavens in different latitudes, some stars disappearing and others appearing, as the pole star in the northern hemisphere and the southern cross south of the equator. Believers in zetetic astronomy of parallax maintain that the stars are set in a hemispherical dome. They're so low and close to the Earth that not all stars can be visible from any one point. Simply, flat Earth theory believes that stars are much closer than heliocentric theory believes, thus being unable to see all the stars. It is interesting that when sailors began reporting in the 1800s to see the North Star some 23.5 degrees below the equator at the Tropic of Capricorn, science conveniently developed the 23.5 degree Earth tilt of the Earth to explain the empirical evidence as well to explain seasonal change in a round ball model. Heliocentrist linchpin theory is based on Newton's 3 laws of gravity postulated in the mid-1700s as an unseen, unknowable force that holds us all to Earth like Velcro along with our mighty oceans. The name gravity is derived from the Latin word gravis, which means heavy or having weight, while Newton's law of gravitation is defined as, quote, that mutual action between masses, end quote, which simply excludes weight as being part of the equation. Consider the extraordinary properties of gravity according to the globalists. As previously stated, the Earth is said to be spinning at 1,000 miles per hour at the equator on its axis, as well as orbiting around the sun at some 533 million miles, which means we would be traveling at 68,000 miles per hour, over 1,000 miles per second. While in addition, our solar system is trucking around the Milky Way at over 500,000 miles per hour. Yet we never ever feel even a whiff or a breeze from such rapid motion and velocity. We are said, along with our oceans, to be Velcro to the Earth, yet clouds and butterflies can float in any direction it wishes. We can raise our hands and jump in the air, defying gravity whenever we wish. This is said by scientists because we live in an atmospheric cocoon that keeps everything relative to each other. This makes no sense at all when given even a little bit of thought. Additionally, with the Earth on a tilt of 23.5 degrees would mean that gravity's pull against the centrifugal outward force would have to be much greater on its backside. Simply placing a soaked tennis ball on a drill bit and spinning it, water will naturally fly outward. This completely defies Newton's theory of gravity. How can this be so? Though flat Earth theorists will be the first to tell you they don't have all the answers, the same cannot be said for the globalists and their 500-year-old story. So let's ask some basic questions and see what we find. 1. Most of us have flown hours on a plane, yet according to spherical geometry, the nose of the plane should be pointing downward to stay with the curvature of the Earth. A jet plane traveling at 500 miles per hour would have to correct for the Earth's curvature of over 1/2 mile per minute, yet never ever does this, proving the Earth is not a globe. 2. The most basic of questions, yet very few ask and even fewer know the answer, according to globalist theory, is what even makes the Earth spin? Here we find little information, but according to science, the Earth was put into perfect rotation After the Big Bang spit out the sun, then the sun spit out the Earth some 4.3 billion years ago, where we traveled some 93 million miles away and settled into an elliptical orbit ever since. We are then said to have settled into a perfect Earth rotation that has kept the same nearly exact spin since that time. The reason the spin is so consistent is due to what science calls, quote, the conservation of momentum, using the analogy as to when an ice skater brings in her arms and accelerates. That's it. That's the entire definition. 3. How can we see the same face of the moon all the time if it rotates? The moon is said to rotate on its axis every 27.3 days, yet how can it rotate and we not see the backside? Astronomers tell us, depending on the source, that it's either because we're in perfect synchronicity with the Earth spinning at 1,000 miles per hour while the moon spins at 10 miles an hour, or it rotates like a clock face, which would mean the moon is really a disk, not a sphere. 4. With a 23.5-degree tilt of the Earth, the Antarctic is much closer to the sun most of the year, yet has 6 times the ice mass of the Arctic. How is this even possible? 5. We are told that the Earth is closer to the sun in January by some 3 million miles due to its elliptical orbit, yet the northern hemisphere is colder in the summer. How is this even possible? 6. Back to Newton and gravity. Astronauts are said to walk in near weightless space at 130 miles above the Earth, which means gravity dissipates the one travels further from a mass. Newton's law says size matters in relativity and determines the extent of gravitational pull. Yet the moon is 1/4 the size of the Earth and 1/6 the gravitational pull, yet moves our mighty oceans up and down twice a day and causes the shape of the Earth to be elliptical. How is this possible? Additionally, the tides are not uniform. At Port Natal in England, the rise and fall is 6 feet, while 600 miles up the coast at Beira, the rise and fall is 26 feet. This effectually settles the matter. The moon has no influence on the tides. 7. Earthrise is one of the most famous photos of modern times. If Earth is said to be 4 times larger than the moon, shouldn't Earth be 4 times larger than the official NASA photos taken from the moon of the Earth? 8. To this day, no commercial airlines fly over the Antarctic, even though flight times between some continents would make it many hours shorter. Only in 2011 was Sir Richard Branson able to get permission to run flights over the North Pole, saving several hours. Curiously, there are no reports of anyone ever circumnavigating the poles going from north and south. The Antarctic is strictly governed since 1959 by the United States and UN through the Antarctic Treaty System, or ATS.
Community could set aside the Arctic for peaceful purposes only, and that the nations in the Arctic could agree that that is a common interest, that they all have a common interest in managing the Arctic for peaceful purposes only. It's not an issue of economics, it's not an issue of environmental protection, it's an issue that crosses all of these uses and interactions.
The Antarctic Treaty Summit, convening on the treaty's 50th anniversary, is to ensure the treaty stays in place. But it's also to showcase to the world an agreement in which sovereignty claims have been set aside.
The lesson from the Antarctic Treaty is it matters not what your political system is, and it doesn't actually matter what your culture is, because there are some fundamental principles about the way in which people want to live that can actually underpin the way in which governance functions for the common good. And the Antarctic Treaty is the best example that we've had so far of how to work together.
Today, when the major challenges for civilization, climate change, depleted resources, are not national but global issues, there's ever-increasing pressure to find a new model for governance. The Antarctic Treaty could be it.
The question is, what's happened since then within the treaty system? Now, one of the provisions in the treaty under those environmental protocols deals with tourism. And I want to talk to you a little bit about that, because we are all going to be directly affected by that. As I said to you earlier, the area of the Antarctic Treaty that it covers is any area south of 60 degrees south. So when this ship reaches that location, we are covered under those provisions. This ship cannot burn heavy fuel. south of 60 degrees. This ship cannot carry heavy fuel south of 60 degrees. So the captain and the engineers have calculated very carefully how much heavy fuel they have on board, and they will be burning that off before we get south of 60 degrees. When we are south of 60 degrees, please, no food on the outside decks. You saw some pictures of birds earlier. If the birds come in, if you're out on the deck with food, and that bird comes in, you're in violation of the Antarctic Treaty under the U.S. laws, because this company operates from a U.S. company, so they have a permit from the Environmental Protection Agency to come here. No waste over the sides. And please be careful if you're outside with a container on, with your coffee lid on it, please. Be careful with the wind that doesn't get blown off. No smoking on the outside decks when we're south of 60 degrees. There'll be a location.
9. The Statue of Liberty in New York stands 326 feet above sea level and on a clear day can be seen as far as 60 miles away. How can this be when basic spherical geometry says it should be some 2,074 feet below the horizon? This once again proves the Earth is not a globe. And 10. Why have geocentrists never corrected the use of incorrect language to describe a spinning globe, Earth, traveling around a central sun over the centuries?
Patience for anyone who denies that this challenge is real. We don't have time for a meeting of the Flat Earth Society.
As stated previously, most of the 7 billion people on this world are absolutely clueless as to flat Earth theory going back thousands of years. Yet to this day it is a prominent topic on the lips and writings of those representing the occult hidden powers. According to the ancients, a picture or a symbol is worth 10,000 words. Here we see flat Earth imagery in the emblems and logos of governing agencies, including a Southern Circle ice wall, as in this, the Department of Defense's logo. And we see flat Earth with surrounding Antarctic ice on the official computer-generated maps from NASA. And we even see the United Nations flag with its telling Freemasonic nomenclature embedded in the outer laurel wreath surrounding a flat Earth, for those with eyes to see and understand what is really going on here. We see their acknowledgement of a flat Earth, such as in the New York Times bestseller book by Thomas Friedman, a New York Times writer and Council of Foreign Relations member. We also see it in the music industry. Thomas Dolby, founder of Dolby Sound, has it on his album cover. And of course, the Do No Evil, Evil Empire Google is on the front page of the past Earth Day logo in 2014. Like will be expanded upon in more depth a little bit later, the powers that run NASA are also the same powers that run our historical institutions, governments, and modern religions. They are all sun occult practitioners. This is why the story was changed when books first started being made available to the public in the 15th and 16th centuries. Here we see the emblem of an Apollo mission with the sun most prominently displayed, with the sun god Apollo riding his chariot and horses to a much less prominent moon mission. NASA's history dates back to October 1st, 1958, when it was founded, and from the beginning and 25 years hence, one Werner Magnus Maximilian Farah von Braun ran NASA's Saturn rocket program for the first Mercury missions through the alleged Apollo missions to the moon. Just as NASA was beginning to be developed to allegedly counter the Russians, who were said to be the first in space, resulting in the Great Space Race, von Braun had plenty of time to go to Hollywood and collaborate with Paramount Pictures and Walt Disney to sell space travel to the public. Man in Space was the pre-programming of the public to accept vast sums of expenditures to counter the Cold War evil empire. It is common knowledge that before coming to NASA, von Braun was the wunderkind leader of the V-2 or Vengeance 2 rocket program for the Germans during World War II. According to a 2011 BBC documentary, the attacks resulted in the deaths of an estimated 9,000 civilians and military personnel, while 12,000 forced laborers and concentration camp prisoners were killed producing the weapons. As the V2 or Vengeance weapon explosions came without warning, the British government initially attempted to conceal their cause by blaming them on defective gas mains. The English public was not fooled and soon became sardonically referring to the V2s as flying gas pipes. The Germans themselves finally announced the V2 on November 8, 1944, and only 2 days later did Winston Churchill inform Parliament and the world that England had been under a rocket attack for the last few weeks, unquote. After these deadly results, British intelligence leaked falsified information implying that the rockets were overshooting their London targets by 10 to 20 miles. Von Braun entered the U.S. illegally through military and U.S. government channels, along with hundreds of other German-known Nazis after World War II, with the help of Vatican-issued passports, where they followed the so-called Vatican rat lines down to South America and then into the U.S. under Operation Paperclip in the early 1950s. Operation Paperclip was the Office of Strategic Services predecessor to the CIA's program used to recruit the scientists of Nazi Germany for employment by the United States in the aftermath of World War II. To circumvent President Truman's anti-Nazi order in the Allied Potsdam and the Yalta Agreement, the JIOA worked independently to create false employment and political biographies for the scientists. They also expunged the public record of the scientists' Nazi Party memberships and regime affiliations. Also included in Operation Paperclip was the bringing over to the U.S. J.D. Rockefeller-funded eugenicists like medical scientists Walter Schreiber, Kurt Blum, Herberta Strughold, and Hans Ottmann. The so-called father of space medicine, Herberta Strughold, was said to be one of the 13 people who participated in the Dachau concentration camp experiments. He was known to have been working on the infamous hypothermia or cold experiments, which exposed prisoners to freezing conditions to see how long it took them to die under such conditions, and if it was possible to be revived. The results obtained from torturing the inmates in concentration camps are used today by doctors to treat hypothermic patients. Further, irony is that the U.S. even currently has a Herberta Strughold Award given out by the American Space Medicine Association for superior space medical achievements. Kurt Blum was a high-ranking Nazi who served as the deputy health minister to the Third Reich and researched bacteriological warfare, using cancer research as his official camouflage. Blum was fascinated by the use of carcinogenic agents and cancer-causing viruses. He ran a Nazi biological warfare program codenamed Blitzableiter, which means lightning rod. Blum's institute was therefore a camouflaged operation for the production of biological warfare agents. He also exposed prisoners in Auschwitz to sarin gas, which is a nerve agent that is classified as a weapon of mass destruction. 3 years later, Blum was tried at the Nuremberg trials for euthanasia and human experimentation, but was acquitted by U.S. Army intelligence. In order for Blum to qualify for admittance in America under President Truman's jurisdiction, military officials withheld incriminating evidence that demonstrated his role as the supervisor of such horrific experiments. We need to take a sidebar here before leaving the World War II time frame. To be very clear, for 500 years we've been trained and taught in schools and by government historical agencies to believe certain stories of history that the hidden occult powers want you to believe. History, it is said, is told by the winners in war, and there had been a war on for the minds of all since the times of Alexandria, when the Romans burned the greatest libraries of all time, followed in history by the Roman Catholic Vatican, effectively purging any heretics who refused their religious doctrines and burned at the stake and worse as examples to anyone who spoke out otherwise during the hundreds of years of the Dark Ages. The official story is that Adolf Hitler and all Nazis were horrible mass murderers, when much evidence is now available suggesting in reality he was onto the hidden occult power and agenda, dressed up as a capitalistic democracy, and was in reality attempting to build a nation free from New World Order controls. One of his first actions in power was to remove the occultists from Germany. Just ask yourself for a moment, why did so many so willingly and happily join Hitler? What reasons could he have possibly given to his people that would have made them give their lives so willingly? Truth be told, Rockefeller's Standard Oil of New Jersey provided critical no-knock additives so the German airplanes could fly. IBM is said to have provided the computers to account for POWs in the German camps. Coca-Cola sold their drinks under Fanta in Germany, and major facilities like the IG Farben plants were spared by Allied bombings during the war. The number of 6 million Jews said to have been exterminated in what has been known as the only Holocaust number has been used by the Zionist and banksters behind the scenes that financed both sides of World War I and II for decades of propaganda now. The Russians apparently were set to massacre 6 million Jews. How coincidental. This story now has been debunked, yet official history fails to correct or rectify this gross untruth. As physical evidence comes to light to disprove these ingrained in history numbers, the official narrative had to begrudgingly be corrected. In 1989, Auschwitz corrected its monuments and reduced the number of deaths from 4 million to 1.1 million based on overwhelming evidence that could no longer be hidden, yet the 6 million total never changed. According to official records directly after World War II, the International Red Cross and detailed German death records indicate that only 150,000 died at Auschwitz, of whom 30,000 were Jews, not millions. Where's the academia historians at our major universities correcting this gross error in newly revised historical fact? It is still illegal in some European countries to even question the official narrative of the Holocaust hoax. The facts are that throughout World War II and after the war, the U.S. and Great Britain were completely aligned with Uncle Joe Stalin, who during his reign of terror murdered between 20 to 50 million of his own people, yet you never hear about this. This was with full knowledge and complicity of the U.S. government and military officials. The term Holodomor refers specifically to the brutal artificial famine imposed by Stalin's regime on Soviet Ukraine and primarily ethnically Ukrainian areas in northern Caucasus in 1932 to 33. In 1945, General Dwight Eisenhower ordered that Operation Keyhole be put into effect. This involved the rounding up and shipping back to their countries of origin all the refugees from communism, men, women, and children, soldier and civilian, male and female, even though many of them had been fighting on our side during the war. Since all of Eastern Europe was then under communist domination, sending these people back was quite literally a sentence of death, some by immediate execution and the rest by slow extermination from overwork and malnutrition in the Soviet slave labor camps in Siberia. These people were rounded up at bayonet point and forced into freight cars and shipped off to their terrible fate. There was no accurate count kept, but the minimum figure was 2 million people and the maximum of 5 million people. After the war, millions more Germans died by starvation and disease in a ruined society, and 1.5 million German soldiers died in Eisenhower's Andersonville-like death camps under the infamous and barbarous Morgenthau-Baruch plans. The recent book Hellstorm by Thomas Goodrich is a must-read and tells the revisionist history of the U.S. directly involvement after World War II. The book lays out vividly and in great detail how the U.S. and specifically General Dwight D. Eisenhower reclassified some 1.2 million captured German POWs from POW to DEF, which stood for Detained Enemy Forces. The reason was so that he could get around having to provide food and medical aid to German prisoners, as was required by the International Red Cross and the U.S.-created Geneva Convention. Today we see the same banksters backed by Zionists in our Congress making unveiled threats of mass destruction, and a very, very large mirror is needed to shine light on who really is and has been the bad guys for centuries. So let's get back to the beginnings of NASA in 1958, where every photo and every story of space exploration has come from for over the past 50 years. The first NASA administrator in 1958 was Dr. Thomas Keith Glennon. Previously to NASA, he was the studio manager for 10 years at Paramount Studios in Hollywood. Then from 1942 to 47, he was administrator and director of the U.S. Naval Underwater Sound Laboratory, and then after the war was production manager for the photographic film manufacturing company ANSCO, also known as GAF. His work in movie making and underwater photography came in handy to fake the Apollo moon missions and spacewalks. Here is the massive underwater neutral buoyancy laboratory in Houston, Texas, which is said to facilitate astronauts with near weightlessness in space, but has been used for decades to facilitate fake space moon footage. Besides computer-generated imaging techniques and underwater photography, the other way NASA simulates missions is through zero-gravity planes. Once airborne and on a parabolic arc, weightlessness is created. Here in this alleged video of astronauts in the space shuttle up in space 130 miles, floating around freely in zero-weight gravity. Note how you can clearly see the crotch-climbing harnesses around the astronauts, as well as a shoulder harness in the bulk of their shirts. NASA can hide the wires, but cannot hide the obvious suspension apparatuses that allows them to flip and float about. This technology has been around since the beginning of the alleged space race, as can be seen from this footage from a Russian documentary about space travel made in 1957. This is just one more example of what we are shown today has existed in secret much longer than we are told.
Но что это? Человек летает? Ну, конечно, ведь тяжесть исчезла. Что же произошло? Отчего наступила невесомость?
Hollywood has been used to pre-program the public to accept certain future realities as the occult elite wish us to see and believe. Here we see an episode from 1966 of Star Trek TV using many of the devices we use today that were unknown or unheard of back in 1966. Trivia buffs should love the fact that Lieutenant Uhura of Star Trek fame, Nichelle Nichols, then went on to be a chief recruiter for NASA of the alleged astronauts in the late 1970s into the late 1980s. Her recruits included the first African-American astronaut, Sally Ride, the first female astronaut, and Judith Resnick, who was alleged to have perished during the launch of the Challenger on January 28, 1986. We accept CGI, or computer-generated imaging, of movies like the recent Clooney-Bullock collaboration of the space film Gravity as being created in Hollywood, yet how hard would it be to fake NASA footage as well from the space station with yesterday and today's CGI capabilities? Fortunately, digital photo analysis advanced, so going back to official NASA photos, like this one of the alleged round ball Earth, shows many duplications that could not have possibly occurred were it a real photograph taken from space. And does anyone seem to care that for over 2 decades now, we are always seeing the exact same photograph of Earth? Secret societies have been part of the occult or hidden hand of preserving the great lie since the beginning. How cool or powerful it would be for secret societies' recruiting purposes if you could tell your new first 3-degree blue members that Buzz Aldrin, the second man we are sold had stepped on the moon, had planted a Scottish Rite Freemason flag on there. From George Washington and his laying of the cornerstones of the White House to many U.S. presidents like Harry S. Truman, many have been Freemasons. So to fake an Apollo moon landing, one Kenneth or Kenny S. Kleinecht managed the Apollo space missions from the beginning until retiring to Lockheed Corp in 1981. He is a 33-degree Mason, and for his great work at NASA and the Apollo fake moon missions, he then became the sovereign Grand Commander and titular head of all Scottish Rite Masons throughout the world. Make no mistake, the powers that run NASA are co-joined, run, and controlled by the military and secret societies of the New World Order, and always have been in modern times. using Hollywood, whose name comes from the holly tree used by the ancient Druids for black magic, as well as known celebrities to promote their sun-worshipping Horus snake ways, as they show off their serpent tongues to mock those without eyes to see or ears to hear the hidden truth about what is really going on in our world today. Up until December of 2014, no books had been written for some 70 years as to flat plane Earth theory. It was during the mid-1850s an independent, free-thinking gentleman and intellectual named Samuel Rowbotham traveled tirelessly for 30 years around Europe to teach flat Earth theory to anyone that would listen. He wrote the book Zetetic Astronomy, Earth Not a Globe, as well as began the International Flat Earth Research Society. Zetetic comes from the Greek language meaning to proceed by inquiry and/or investigation. Following his death, Lady Elizabeth Blount, wife of explorer Sir Walter de Soddington Blount, established the Universal Zetetic Society. The society published a magazine, the Earth Not a Globe Review, and remained active well into the 20th century. William Carpenter continued on with Rowbotham's work as well. Mr. Carpenter published The Theoretical Astronomy Examined and Exposed, proving the Earth Not a Globe in 8 parts in 1864 under the name Common Sense. He later emigrated to Baltimore, where he published 100 Proofs the Earth is Not a Globe in 1885. In 1901, David Wardlaw Scott published Terra Firma, the Earth Not a Planet, provided from Scripture, Reason, and Fact. In the United States, as Einstein's theory of relativity was beginning to be promoted as scientific genius by the Royal Society of London, a very brave and intelligent man named Gerard Hickson took to the task to debunk the modern astronomers' heliocentric theories from Copernicus to Einstein. In his excellent little-known book, Kings Dethroned, he matter-of-factly proves the mathematical flaws and erroneous assumptions built upon when inventive theory made the proposition that the Earth was a sphere and not a flat, and rotated around the sun, and was not Earth-centric. This is a must-read for anyone to truly understand how science and astronomy has got it so wrong for so long. He was followed by Wilbur Voliva, who preached the flat Earth science in Zion, Illinois for over a decade, until the first space launches in the late 1950s and early 60s appeared to prove flat Earth theorists wrong, yet he continued to believe in and preach the flat Earth cosmology. In 1956, Samuel Shenton started the Flat Earth Society, and he too spent many years traveling around Europe, convincingly teaching flat Earth theory despite tremendous ridicule and scorn from newspapers, yet rarely losing an argument to round-ball heliocentric arguments and alleged proofs. In the 1970s, across the pond, Charles and Marjorie Johnson took up the cause, and determined to follow on Mr. Shenton's work, they published the Flat Earth News. Suspiciously, their home was burned down by an arsonist, and all their research and documentation, as well as their historical records, were lost in the fire. Sadly, Marjorie died shortly thereafter, and Charles died homeless and poor. Yet now, some 40 years later, a 30-something Eric Dubay has revived the conversation as to facts and myths of heliocentrism versus geocentrism. In his must-read book, Flat Earth Conspiracy, published in December, he emphatically proves viable evidence of a flat Earth, as well as showing evidence of 500 years of a globalist conspiracy.
You're going to or from, but if the Earth was actually spinning at the rate that they say it was, flight times would be totally different.
It makes sense, but yet I've been taught from an early age not to trust myself because they've got it on lock, so I just assume that the physics all kind of works out. But I know there are people who go to school for physics. You know, they study it for years and years, and it's just odd that none of them ever catch on to it. That I guess that guys like Newton created this entire fake science around a fake model, and yet all the math checks out. That's a little hard for me to rectify.
Well, they're counting on that. That's why they've got all these huge formulas and calculations for gravity and whatnot that are based on nothing. So, like, they've got a weight for the ball Earth, all based on their gravity calculations.
Science is designed exactly how economics and taxes are designed. The increasing complexity makes it so the average individual just has to trust the experts. You can follow it to a certain point, but then most people say, well, that's a little bit beyond me, but there's experts out there. They know what they're doing. I'm sure that this fractional reserve banking system, this debt-based system of rule is just fine. I'm sure the taxes I'm paying are totally fair. They've got the code. They got the big book. They wouldn't overcharge me. They wouldn't, pull any scams on me. And you could apply the same thing to, of course, science. But it's just, to what degree? This is a really far out degree.
That's right, yeah. I mean, our eyes and experience tell us the Earth is flat and motionless, and everything in the sky revolves around us. But when we cease to believe our own eyes and experience, we have to prostrate ourselves at the feet of these very pseudoscientists who are blinding us, treat them as experts, astronomical priests who have special knowledge only they can access, like the Hubble telescope. So by brainwashing us of something so gigantic and fundamental, it actually makes every other kind of lesser indoctrination a piece of cake. Earth being the flat, fixed center of the universe around which everything in the heavens revolves gives a special importance and significance not only to Earth, but to us humans, the most intelligent among the intelligent designers' designs. By turning Earth into a spinning ball thrown around the sun and shot through infinite space from a godless Big Bang, they turn humanity into a random, meaningless, purposeless accident of a blind, dumb universe. So it's like trauma-based mind control, beating the divinity out of us with their mental manipulations. People are always asking, why do they do this? Other than the obvious profit margin motive, NASA being the biggest black budget black hole in existence, sucking in over $30 billion taxpayer money for the fake moon landings alone. Nowadays, hundreds of billions of dollars, and not just NASA, but RASA and all the other fake space organizations around the world, giving CGI images for hundreds of billions of dollars. So this modern atheist Big Bang heliocentric globe Earth chance evolution paradigm spiritually controls humanity by removing God or any sort of intelligent design and replaces purposeful divine creation with haphazard random cosmic coincidence. And so by removing Earth from the motionless center of the universe, these Masons have moved us physically and metaphysically from a place of supreme importance to one of complete nihilistic indifference. If the Earth is the center of the universe, then the ideas of God, creation, and a purpose for human existence are resplendent. But if the Earth is just one of billions of planets revolving around billions of stars and billions of galaxies, then the ideas of God, creation, and a specific purpose for Earth and human existence become highly implausible. So by surreptitiously indoctrinating us into their scientific materialist sun worship, not only do we lose faith in anything beyond the material, we gain absolute faith in materiality, superficiality, status, selfishness, hedonism, and consumerism. If there's no God and everyone's just an accident, then all that really matters is me, me, me. So they've turned Madonna, the mother of God, into the material girl living in a material world. Their rich, powerful corporations with their slick sun cult logos sell us idols to worship, slowly taking over the world while we tacitly believe their science, vote for their politicians, buy their products, listen to their music, watch their movies, all sacrificing our souls at the altar of materialism.
Touche, my man.
It's a big deception. I'd say
So he was the Most High at 12 noon. And so Horus walks across his 12 steps. So we say the same thing today. Same thing. We have 12 Horuses. But instead of H-O-R-U-S, we make it H-O-U-R-S. Becomes hours, changing the U and the R. Now it becomes 12 hours. No, it's 12 Horuses. And Horus represents light. The sun represents light. Light in Latin is Lucius. Lucius, when personified as a god, becomes Luke. And this is why I have Luke Skywalker. And he walks across the sky and meets his evil brother, Darth Vader, or in the Egyptian religion, Set. He was the god of darkness. The prince of darkness was Set. Why? Because it got dark at sunset. So the whole idea is that it's the whole world that we live in is based on Egypt, Mesopotamia, ancient Greece, ancient Rome. All of the stuff that we live in this world is based on ancient religions and cults and secret societies and Masonic orders, and the people of this world have no idea in the world what's going on. I've spent 48 years studying occultism, mysticism, words, terms, legal terms, government, international banking, theology, religions. I'm telling you, there's a world of knowledge you have never been told. That's been right there for you, but it just never occurred to anyone to sit down for 48 years and study this stuff in the dark. I mean, I have a high respect for all religions, for all belief systems, but I'm telling you, it needs to be based on wisdom and knowledge. Let me give you an example in the Old Testament.
The following segment comes principally from the work of Dinesh at musicoftheancientsblogspot.com. Quote, "The Bible is a complete Masonic work compiled of Jewish, Egyptian, and Eastern mysticism. The words of Jesus come from the ancient oracle scrolls of Egypt. All the characters are archetypes of the human psyche and nothing more. Horus, the virgin-born redeemer of the Egyptians, came into the world to destroy the enemies of the great god Ra. Therefore Horus changed himself into the form of the winged sun disk and took with him the female goddess Nekabet and Uatitchit in the form of two serpents. Here we see the 7 sacred planets around 2 pyramids, one inverted. Pyramid meets fire in the middle. The triangles represent the as is above, so is below teaching of the ancients. The serpent, or Ouroboros, represents the shedding of skin, or rebirth, in the infinite cycle or circle of creation. After their successful war upon the enemies of Ra, Horus commanded Thoth, the god of secret wisdom, that the winged sun disk with the erect serpents should be brought into every sanctuary of all the gods of the lands of the south and the north. It should be noted that some of the earliest Christians, called the Ophites, actually worshiped the serpent. In the New Testament, Jesus says, quote, 'Be wise as serpents,' end quote. And of course, Moses raised up the brazen serpent. The reason being is that the serpent draws on a very interesting analogy with its habitudes of life. Its rebirth through the shedding of skin, the spiral coiled shape which is often depicted as 7 coils culminating to its head, which depicts the creative life force. To this day, we still see the powers in control of our world use these images to have effect on our psyche or soul. The dark force that creates the illusion of its power is ultimately a reflection of our collective psyche." End quote. All of the creation stories of the world speaks of this group who hides the sacred teachings from the world. It is the story of Osiris being cut up into the 14 pieces scattered across the Nile. Isis finds all the pieces except the penis, which she replaces with a gold member. This is the true meaning of the cry of Isis or crisis, and why most religions, especially Roman Catholic Christianity, are principally sun worshippers. The creation story, or myth of the solar deities, seeks to keep the human soul decapitated forever. This is Lucifer's, the fallen light angel's, purpose on earth. Quote, "When a newborn male baby is circumcised, it causes the vulnerable, sensitive human infant's soul to depart from the body, allowing another less sensitive, tough energy to step in, one that can handle the incredible assault to its nervous system and physical and spiritual integrity. Circumcision is a satanic-based ritual. It is a form of trauma-based mind control and central to the hidden occult practices to keep all in servitude. This is why the pyramid on the back of the dollar bill has an unfinished or circumcised cap with an eye for an eye to all that can see behind the deception and the programming. The penis and vagina are the most central themes laid out in the occult architecture representing creation. The central power structures of the world erected literally and metaphysically, obelisks at the center of their power bases. The female principle is called the Yoni and shown in sacred geometry as the Vesica Pisces. This quote is from John Yarker of the Arcane Schools. Quote, "The Vesica Pisces, 2 interlinked circles, is also known as a Yoni. The name Yoni refers to the middle portion of the interlocking circles, is derived from the Sanskrit meaning divine passage. That the Yoni is the feminine, the Yoni should be viewed such that the divine passage becomes a correlation to sex or male-female union. It is this correlation and its relation to rebirth and regeneration that remains a basic truth at the very core of occult's structural foundations." End quote. We also see these images in early Christian religion and is where the Pisces fish, the astrological sign, also comes from. All throughout the major power centers of the world, we see the obelisk penetrating the Vesica Pisces, or Yoni. This is not by accident, but by serious intention of design, planning, and building of hundreds of years of architecture that still applies to us today as symbolic imagery of the hidden forces over all of humanity. The Vatican, the City of London, and Washington, District of Columbia are all individual city-states beholden to no country. Each has its own constitution, mayor, bank, post office, and CEO of the corporation. The current president of the all-caps United States of America is Barack Obama. Please look up the Organic Act of 1871 to understand how this came to be. Also, look up the definition of what exactly the District of Columbia is and what it is named after. All roads still lead back across the pond to the City of London, back to Rome in modern times. Is it any wonder why males are still obsessed with their phallic symbolism of male superiority to this day? When we look out into the cosmos, the universe, we are actually looking at a reflection of the vastness of our own being from which we are not separate. The genius that has made the brilliance of all the cosmos and nature is the same intelligence that operates within us, however dormant or unrecognized it may be. Again, this is from Dash at the Music of the Ancients, blogspot.com. The sun is the electric conscious impregnator of nature, the moon the magnetic subconscious. At nighttime, when the moon is ruling, it is our subconscious that takes over, projecting itself in our dream state. This is the story has been told with many different symbols and languages. The world is the word, and the word is vibration. In fact, the word world is derived from WHIRLED, world, implying a circular spinning motion. By becoming in sync with the rhythms, patterns, and frequencies of the natural world, we vibrationally entrain ourselves to the great architect or the great chemist of nature. This is the true foundation of perfect health, to be in perfect resonance and alignment with nature. The clearer and more conductive our body or instrument is, results in the synchronization of our subjective, spiritual mind with the objective, scientific, or analytical mind. To ignore either one of these two aspects of self is to create imbalance. Everything in nature, living and non-living, has natural resonant frequencies. There is a biological and harmonic connection between our biological pulsating frequency and that of Earth. The inherent frequency of the Earth is 7.8 hertz. Earth resonates with a frequency similar to a person's brain waves. This frequency has been shown in scientific studies to be an essential requirement for the physical and psychological health. The dominant brainwave frequency of sensitivities such as shamans and healers comes close to 7.83 hertz and may at times beat in phase with the Earth's signals, thereby causing harmonic resonance. Naturally, our bodies are crystalline batteries capable of conducting powerful electromagnetic forces. To resuscitate a heart, doctors use an electromagnetic device called a defibrillator to re-jump or bring back to life the heart. This is the rejoining of the male-female sun-moon forces inherent in us all. Both humans and Earth are 72% salt, as well as being some 2/3 water. The anagram for heart is Earth. This cannot be by coincidence. We are part of nature, not apart from nature, as the occultists wish us to think and believe. The number 7 plays prominently in sacred geometry, as well as in the vibrations of music as it relates to Pythagoras' music of the spheres, energy of the stars, and physical human form. There are 7 sacred planets, 7 major levels of the chakra, 7 days of the week, 7 notes of an octave on a piano, and the 7 primary colors of the rainbow relating back to the 7 sacred planets. There is also 7 unions of the 2 coiled serpents with solar wings, as emblazoned in the logo of the caduceus staff used by Western medicine. We see these 2 entwined serpents representing our DNA coiling up through the 7 chakras, or major energy centers of the body. The knowledge sought by the ancients, like Pythagoras and Isaac Newton, who were known alchemists and Freemasons, was their intention to blend matter, or mata, which means earth, to reach spirit. Gold and light were 2 of the physical properties available to them. They sought to understand the transcendence of matter into light as depicted in Jesus Christ's allegory of ascension, or apotheosis, into the rainbow heaven at the right hand of God. Paganism imagery lives throughout depictions of Christ. His thorny crown representing the sun's rays, the halo, the Son of God. The four cardinal points, the four seasons, all represented in his image on the cross. The allegory of the crucifixion itself is an attempt to prevent the unification of form and consciousness to attain enlightenment through the power of mind. Not so coincidentally, government literally means mind control. It is control of the mind the occult forces are after. The Vatican is a sun cult for anyone with eyes to see and ears to hear. They are even as so brazen as to hold their religion on a sun day. We can see from many images the rainbow bridge as to ascension to enlightenment, depicted in Christianity as well as in many other religions, including sun cult worshippers. It is the way to higher consciousness, we are being shown and told. Even on the United States Capitol's inner dome, we see where George Washington was depicted by the architects in the 1800s on his ascension or apotheosis using the rainbow bridge to heaven above. Note he is purposely placed at noon on the sundial. Washington was also a Freemason, as were many of the founding fathers. The 7 primary colors surround the central white light in the seat of life in sacred geometry. The seed of life precedes the tree of life and recedes the egg of life, whose geometrical forms can be seen throughout all of creation. Sacred geometry is also portrayed in the ancient Jewish Kabbalah tree of life. The Kabbalah represents a systematic overview of how existence functions on every level, from the microcosmic to the macrocosmic. Kabbalah is a science, a philosophy, an art, and a religion, but is universal and applies to all religions, all sciences, all philosophies, and all arts. Kabbalah provides an understanding of how the human being fits into nature and how nature functions from the lowest, most dense levels all the way up to the most profound. Through this knowledge, a person comes to know where they are now in the scale of the universe and how to traverse those levels and reach a better station in life. Again, from Music to the Ancients, quote, "Heaven and earth represent the first circle and square, which is the reason why Freemasonry's primary symbols are the compass and the square. Squaring the circle is one of the oldest themes in history. Even the Great Pyramid at Giza encodes pi in many different ways, and it also circles the square. It is interesting to note that there are 33 degrees of Freemasonry, 33 vertebrae in our spinal column. Water goes from solid to liquid at 33 degrees. Adding up the total number of paths and Sephiroth on the tree of life in the Kabbalah equals 33. And of course, the purpose of mercury in a thermometer is that it is volatile and rises like the brazen serpent when exposed to heat. This is an exact correlation with the Kundalini process to ascension and is also seen in Freemason symbology. The G in the Freemason symbol is thought to represent gematria, which is the magical form of geometry. A simple explanation of gematria is that it's an interrelating system of assigning numbers to symbols, typically words and phrases, and the way in which these symbols interrelate reveals secrets about the ageless wisdom. Gematria is known most in conjunction with the Hebrew alphabet, which has also influenced the English language derived from the Greek alpha and beta for our alphabet. It is said that the egg of creation is cracked by the 1 to produce the 2, which is rhythm and polarity. This cracking of the cosmic egg is also a universal myth found in many cultures across the world. From the 0 to the 1 to the 2 brings us to the stability of the 3. The 3 represents the first plane or triangle, which brings stability to the previous principles. In the tradition of sacred geometry, the number 3 is always given to the circle. This is the 3 within the circle is also the creation of the above and heaven and earth or the below, which has always been symbolized as a square, which is given the number 4, obviously because of its 4 corners. The square of the earth is the 4 principal elements which we already went over. So now we add heaven to earth, 3 plus 4, we get the creation of all, or the 7 days of creation, also symbolizing the human being.
schmucks interested to go out with the movie stars to watch a ball game. Not me. I'm not going to any ball game. I'm going to an education at UCLA. I want to know who's running this country, how it works, who set up our government, who gave us our religions, where these religions come from. The whole idea of Christianity is nothing more than sun worship. I mean, the sun is our risen Savior. Of course the sun is your risen Savior. God's sun is our, you don't own the sun. Africa doesn't own the sun. So who owns the sun? Well, obviously God owns the sun. Well, then it's God's sun. And God's sun is the light of the world. Of course the sun's the light of the world. What the hell else lights the earth if it isn't the sun? So God's sun lights the world. He's the light of the world. He's our risen Savior. Of course it's your risen Savior. If it doesn't rise, you're dead in 6 weeks. So wait till it don't come up. And you'll see it is your Savior. And the sun, the Egyptians said the sun gives off energy. And energy is life. That's why you have the life of a battery. When the battery goes dead, there's no energy. So the Egyptians said the sun is pure energy. And it's giving its energy so that we might live. So God's sun is giving his life that you might live. Of course the sun's giving its life. It's giving its energy so that you can grow and the plants can grow. And once you begin to understand religion, where it comes from, the whole story of Jesus is nothing more than a metaphor. There was no Jesus, there was no Abraham, no Isaac, no Jacob. There was no Moses, no King Solomon. None of those people in the Bible ever lived. These are metaphors for something far deeper that the ancient writers were trying to tell you in a metaphor. There's a symbolic story. And if you don't get the symbolism, you will go for your whole life in trouble because you didn't know how to read the symbols. You don't know what's really going on behind the scenes. You drive down through Los Angeles.
Broadly speaking, the story of Horus is as follows. Horus was born on December 25th of the Virgin Isis Mary. His birth was accompanied by a star in the east, which, in turn, 3 kings followed to locate and adorn the newborn Savior. At the age of 12, he was a prodigal child teacher, and at the age of 30, he was baptized by a figure known as Anup, and thus began his ministry. Horus had 12 disciples he traveled about with, performing miracles such as healing the sick and walking on water. Horus was known by many gestural names such as the Truth, the Light, God's Anointed Son, the Good Shepherd, the Lamb of God, and many others. After being betrayed by Typhon, Horus was crucified, buried for 3 days, and thus resurrected. These attributes of Horus, whether original or not, seem to permeate many cultures of the world, for many other gods are found to have the same general mythological structure. Attis of Phrygia, born of the Virgin Nana on December 25th, crucified, placed in a tomb, and after 3 days was resurrected. Krishna of India, born of the Virgin Devaki, with a star in the east signaling his coming. He performed miracles with his disciples, and, upon his death, was resurrected. Dionysius of Greece, born of a virgin on December 25th, was a traveling teacher who performed miracles such as turning water into wine. He was referred to as the King of Kings, God's only begotten Son, the Alpha and Omega, and many others. And, upon his death, he was resurrected. Mithra of Persia, born of a virgin on December 25th, he had 12 disciples and performed miracles, and upon his death was buried for 3 days and thus resurrected. He was also referred to as the Truth, the Light, and many others. Interestingly, the sacred day of worship of Mithra was Sunday. The fact of the matter is, there are numerous saviors from different periods from all over the world which subscribe to these general characteristics. The question remains, why these attributes?
Few people realize that many of the greatest minds of our time have concerned themselves with this subject. Nothing is true, everything is permitted. The greatest minds that the world has produced primarily advocate the study and alignment of ourselves with nature. This constitutes the great work of the alchemist, whose operations exceed the depth of understanding of modern chemistry in many ways. This is what it means to climb Mount Meru, known as Mount Kailash in Tibet today. The tree of life is essentially a reflection of our own consciousness. A tree is a perfect symbol to connect the earth with heaven because its roots branch out into the earth and likewise its body reaches into the sky. In this way, it connects the below with the above and comes to represent the perfect distribution and growth of the universal force which spreads out from its seed to create its trunk, branches, leaves, and fruit. It simultaneously has come to represent the descent of spirit into matter and its ascent back to spirit while conferring the quality of immortality. There is a vast range of myths that the circle around the tree, yet generally the deeper allegory remains hidden. Symbols and stories have tremendous power over the human being, especially when combined with cultural heritage and one's sense of identity. Throughout history, manipulative forces have inverted these symbols and myths for control and fear. In conclusion, if we are to approach the sacred science or royal path, we must come into the intelligence of the heart. Only through the middle path of the heart, which anatomically links the below and the above of our microcosm, can the ancient wisdom be understood. This is the middle path of the Buddha, and is why Christ is often depicted pointing to the heart. Bringing the two back into one, the above into the below, is the secret of the alchemical marriage. The importance of this cannot be overemphasized.
Thank you.